Alanis Morissette needs no introduction. We've lived her music, we lived her emotions, we lived her life. We have the amazing opportunity to talk with her today about forgiveness. But most importantly, I want to say that what I am so grateful for is Alanis's gift as a friend, as a wife, as a mother, as a co-journeyer exploring life together. And I just want to thank you for your time, Alanis, and for this opportunity to talk about forgiveness, for joining us on the Tutu Global Forgiveness Challenge. Alanis is taking the challenge with us. I just want to start off talking about the relationship between, your music and your own forgiveness journey. It seems like, the lyrics that you sing in You Ought to Know and the lyrics you sing in This Grudge obviously expresses a real transformation in your own relationships and in your own life. And I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been a long journey of finding ways to creatively channel my own personal reactivity and my own anger and take responsibility for it, because I've just found how empowering it is for me to take responsibility for my reactions and my responses to what life has tossed or hurtled my way, either way. And I think part of the songwriting process, the invitation in art for me is this gorgeous catharsis that can happen. And I naively thought that the writing of a song could provide healing. But I really quickly came to see that regardless of how many nights I would sing You Ought to Know over and over again on stage, that the real healing came from actual relationships and communication and my taking responsibility for my side of the street. And so over the years, I would muster up the courage that was so easy for me to apply to songwriting and attempt to apply that to my relationships. And that's when healing really did start to happen.
Well, I remember you saying that creativity is not necessarily catharsis. And I thought that was a very powerful statement. And it's kind of what you were saying now, that the healing has to happen in a different way. It has to happen in a relationship. And maybe you could talk a little bit more about what is so healing about our relationships and what difference that makes.
Well, it's being scientifically corroborated. It's being, the mirror neurons, the fact that we need each other, and that's really evidenced in the attachment stage of our own development as babies and onward, that when we have that eye contact, that skin on skin, that commitment and intimacy, which is commensurate to the degree of healing that is available, it really shows us that our relationships, particularly the ones that we commit to long term, really hold out the invitation for great healing mutually, because we can correct any interactions, neglectful ones, abusive ones from our past, that it's never too late and that love can heal it all if we're intentional around it and we know what we're up to, that we can be active participants in each other's healing. So when it's a really committed friendship or community or marriage or even business partnership, frankly, when we sign up for the proverbial long haul, we're committing to really great junctures and opportunities for healing that I didn't know was possible until I started committing, and now I've become a commitment junkie, a healing junkie. I can't create and participate in, and frankly receive enough opportunities to correct anything that we may have missed in our childhoods and onward.
Well, let's jump back for a second to You Ought to Know. I mean, kind of what was your relationship to at that point to this process of healing and forgiveness? I mean, obviously that's, kind of the breakup anthem for many people. There's a lot of raw and beautiful emotion in that song, but it's certainly, it's very much it's not from a place of forgiveness, obviously, at that point.
The opposite. I also think that the road to forgiveness is exactly that. It's a path toward forgiveness. Yeah. And on an egoic human psyche level, attempting to forgive before the natural process has unfolded is almost like putting the cart before the horse in a really almost violent way. So sometimes the forgiveness process for me happens in 10 seconds. And sometimes, unfortunately and embarrassingly, perhaps, it would take 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so what I found was that when I tried to rush the process toward forgiveness on an intellectual level, it didn't allow for the natural unfolding toward understanding of what was going on, because if I was attempting to forgive someone from an egoic state, I don't think my ego has the capacity to even understand what forgiveness is. It implies that someone has, quote unquote, done me wrong, which on an egoic level may be accurate. On a spiritual level, there is nothing to forgive. You know, we're all bumping into each other, we're stepping on each other's toes, we're offending each other, we're potentially healing each other, we're helping each other out, we're ignoring each other. I mean, we're on a human level, we're basically go-karts bumping into each other a lot. On a spiritual level, we're inextricably linked, we're connected, we're all these individuated spirits in human form. And so to the degree that we forget that we're connected, we can offend each other and really maim and hurt each other, frankly. So in that sense, it's appropriate to have forgiveness. When I come at things from a more spiritual place, when I can access that, and I certainly can't all the time, forgiveness is such a given that the term almost is inappropriate, because it's really understanding. You know, once I understand the big picture of what the interaction was, that it's alchemically attempting to bring me to my next stage of evolution, and it's the invitation for both parties or all parties involved to evolve our souls, then context is like a mechanism or a catapult into our next stage of evolution. It's really exciting, you know. But if my very small s self is asked to forgive prematurely, it's a disaster. And that's when when I take my quote unquote inability to forgive at any given moment and I put it into a song, it can really kickstart the movement from that despair to a more activated anger, appropriately expressed. You know, I think art is a great context to express emotion, certainly anger, in a way that's safe and not destructive. Yeah. And then move on to the greater understanding and the natural organic forgiveness arrival point that I think is where we arrive when we do get the big picture of what's going on a macrocosmic level in terms of how our souls operate. So songwriting to me is telling the story, which is a very egoic experience, and it's really fun, and it's colorful, and it's dramatic, and it's conflict filled because ego can't help itself, you know. And then when I allow myself to step back and disidentify from the story and disidentify from our small sort of identities, I really can see that we're inextricably linked, that we're connected on a soul level, and that there really is nothing to forgive, and if anything, there's something to be grateful for. Now, that's when I'm in my highest place, which I'm obviously not in all the time. So when I'm in that sort of, I'll call it my smaller place, that's the best time for me to write art. There's no bad time to write art. You know, when I'm in a particularly spiritual, awake place, fantastic time to write a song. When I'm in a very small, revenge-filled, you know, egoic place, it's a lovely time to write a song. You can't really go wrong. But it has been a journey for me, and I'm aware of where I'm at in terms of my smaller S self or my big S self, dependent upon how willing I am to quote unquote forgive somebody. You know,